Good morning to everyone. We are in the session 2 of the day 5 of Atal sponsored workshop. And today in this session, we have with us Dr. M. Nirmala Devi ma'am from Amrita University. Dr. M. Nirmala Devi ma'am is currently working as a professor in the Department of ECE, Amrita School of Engineering. During her tenure at Amrita, she received her PhD in the area of VLSI design of artificial neural network from Anna University. Ma'am has completed a funded project on hardware Trojan detection as principal investigator, which is sponsored by DRDO. She is a co-PI in few research projects sponsored by ISRO and BRNS. She has delivered lectures on VLSI design in AICTE, UGC sponsored faculty development programs and conferences. She has also organized a few in house workshops and national symposium on VLSI designs and computational tools. She has served as Board of Studies member for some reputed institutions. She is also the recipient of Appreciation Award and Research Award from Amrita University, Marcus Who's and Who's in the World, and from International Biographical Center. And she has published around 59 papers in international journals and conferences in her field of expertise. She has served as a reviewer for international conferences and international journals, which include Elsevier, Springer, and InterScience. Ma'am, we welcome you for the session on behalf of Sri Krishna College of Engineering and Technology. Ma'am, the dais is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Jayanti, and the fellow colleagues, faculty colleagues. A very good morning to one and all. I hope I'm audible. And if any comments, you please do chat in the box. And it gives me really a great pleasure to share what all I have acquired on the topic of machine learning, which has become very popular in the recent days, and almost every domain in the world is exploring this machine intelligence and machine learning. And specifically, I would like to share my school of thought on how can we extend it for a classification problem. And the focus for today would probably have a choice of what are all the usages, how can I make use of the ML to the better extent, and what are all the types of ML, and how do I make a choice, and what are the real challenges the ML is facing, and how do we handle it using the feature engineering. And once I develop the model ready at hand, how do I do the evaluation? And before performing the evaluation, how the dimensionality can be managed to be a practical situation. So all this informations would be shared, and ultimately some specific class of algorithms would be spared off so to get a better understanding. And probably this word you would have heard in the past few days a lot. So I don't need to elaborate anything further on this, but ultimately, when there is a limitation probably on the execution of the human intelligence, we might seek the help of a machine. So, and there are situations where human interventions is not possible. In those kind of scenarios, we might require the algorithms to be artificially made or machine made. So that is why we probably got ventured into the machine learning algorithms. And the beauty of this would be it can handle even the empirical data and then take a decision. And in order to make our system to be a very intelligent based and learning based, we have to make it to get trained by the process of training. And nothing will come out free. So we, the developer, should take care of the training set and the testing set so that the distribution is perfect in such a way that the algorithms and the assumptions are better made. And this is a typical example of a scenario where we do have the universal set, which has become unobserved because we might not know the sequence or the classification or the data set nature. In such a scenario, the data acquisition is handled in a blind space, whereas when we wanted to observe or apply it to a training set, probably some sort of observations to be applied so that it would become reasonably manageable. And when we take it in practical usage, take it for the practical applications scenario, or the training is completed and the testing phase starts. So the testing is supposed to probably get a new or unknown data, but still it can make a decision. Any information, anything? So I assume that we are all on track. And the machine learning, in fact, the machine learning has probably come across or been classified into the traditional method and how the current method. So traditionally we know the beauty of the traditional approach is we, the human being, will learn the system, study the problem, and make the machine interpretable rules, and then verify whether the developed rules are performing as per our expectation. If better, we launch the algorithm. If not satisfied, we have to revisit the algorithm again and again till we get a betterment in the evaluation. This has been done for years together, for so long. How does this machine learning better has become better is we don't want to naturally make the rules fed to the algorithm, rather we want it to be self-learned. So, but one thing is very for sure, we need to make our data understandable by the machine. So there lies the challenge in the ML algorithms, ML scenarios. So the data, how efficiently or how discreetly we feed, and that tends to get a better learning. For example, the specific scenario, what I meant, even I just hinted it to a situation where the automated algorithm or automated updates are necessary because every person cannot keep on changing the algorithm for every changing scenarios. So this is the stage where the machines can help us in a better way. So it has now been cyclic and multi iterative, as well as it can be automated. So for all these three objectives, we can make use of the automated algorithms. So the data is fed, it has to be trained for a per single scenario, evaluate, launch, not satisfied, or is a system having an updated data, still make the data engineering, apply it to the algorithm, and keep on rotating. So this kind of algorithms or machine learning scenarios we have been come across for quite a long time, and this is now become very, very essential. Instead of being popular, it has become really essential. In such a case is shown in the right hand side. For example, data mining, where we know we come across a term called the buzzwords like big data analytics. So a lot of data, because everybody is posting data on the internet, which is very friendly and very easily accessible. In such cases also, we can't make any human to make out the data or make the clarifications on the lots and lots of data available, then train an algorithm. So we want to really feel happy and free by totally depending upon the automated algorithms developed. Here, this I said, the left hand side was the conventional using the human brain, and the right side activities are by depending upon the machines, and specifically in situations where the patterns need to be uncovered and the trends in data can be handled easily by the machine, whereas human being have a specific routines to understand and follow, whereas this will handle all possible scenarios and cases. And a typical complex problem can be a handwritten recognition example. Every individual might have a different handwritten data. So classifying that or identifying that would really become a cumbersome or a challenging task. So to put it in a nutshell, probably how the different data analytics play a role. The right hand side, the left side is what we might go in detail. So the right hand side, I just wanted to hint the pattern detection. Detection is something like probably we have a regular rhythm of a pattern. For example, in the case of any critical systems like a power plant system, where the data is supposed to maintain a rhythm, and when the rhythm changes, and it might be a temporal or a spatial data, so it is time dependent data. When it exhibits an irregular rhythm, we might have to detect it so that any undue effect before happening. So that is where the pattern detection would find a place. Similarly, the simulation, which is a very, very essential topic as of now, because of the current scenario, lot of data we have, but still not all are useful or all are informative. In such a case, we might need to generate a data so that it is something called data generation or synthetic data generation. For that, even the simulation kind of analytics could be applied. Whereas the left hand side, the classification is what we might go deeper in the upcoming slides. And clustering would, by the term itself, would just put it in a specific group for the instances at hand. Now, a typical example. So let's imagine a company had to supply the credit card to all the applicants. So how does it handle it? It has to get the database or the statistics or the details of the applicants and put it in a table and decide whether the person is suitable enough to be applied with a credit card or to be approved a credit card or not. So there are multiple data. This very typical and simple practical example is chosen. For example, just look at the table. This is how the data been consolidated and then presented. Age, of course, is a matter of concern. And more importantly, whether he has a job, and to add on or to make the stage very comfortable, whether he possesses his own house, and the credit rating might be the next better stand on which we might have a decision. So we have to apply whether he has a true or false conditions, and then based on the more than one information, we can take a decision. This is a typical example how the algorithm is pursuing it. But there are many types of developing the stage, and these terms are very familiar to you, I'm very sure. The supervised, unsupervised. I don't need to elaborate anything further, but the reinforcement learning, which is also very upcoming now, and is having the possibility of probably handling a situation even when it is being put under a very new environment and there is no clue whether it is a good or bad or a classifying or clustering system. And so specifically, the reinforcement learning is found to be better suited for optimization kind of problems. Whereas what is the supervised and unsupervised would suit, we will see in detail in the upcoming slides. And this is one sort of classification based on the tutor. And the whether it is being learned incrementally, means one by one, case by case, or together once on the fly, that is a batch wise. So these are the two types of learning. Whereas the decision made can be based on the instance or the model. If it is based on the instance, means each incoming signal is compared with the already detected and then put it in a particular cluster. That is one sort of one flow. Or if a model is well developed through learning, then the incoming pattern is detected and then perfectly classified. That is also another class of action. So these are specific cases when we might prefer one particular type of algorithm. And to put it in a very practical and diagrammatic way, the ML algorithm is the heart of the system, and the training and text or the multiple data we have at hand. And this cannot be directly fed to the ML algorithm, rather a process called feature engineering, which is very important and that needs a study, is indicated here. So from the use a human readable format, you choose or pick the features and then give it to the algorithm. And when we have probably the decision or the labels attached to it, we call it as a supervised learning. So all the blue arrows indicates the learning part, whereas the bottom green arrows indicate the testing part. So when the ML is ready, a new data is applied and the feature vector is again retrieved by the model, predicted model only, and then decides whether it is yes or no, whatever the category, if it is a bi-class or a dual class classifier. A typical example can be a spam classification. So certain messages we wanted to avoid and we want to put it in the spam folder. Then in the training class, we need to say which are all from the reliable sources. And from the label attached, the green tick indicates it's all reliable sources. And the red dot indicates that it is not a reliable source. So we have to remove this kind of informations. Then once the training is done, the new instance is being classified properly. And especially for the text, audio, image data classification, the supervised learning would probably save time. And to be specific, the supervised where the labels or the category is known can perform the job of classification very well, which we have just hinted, and it can also do the regression. The subtle difference between classification and regression would be classification by default we can understand, and the regression would also be some sort of classification, but the output can be a real value. That is one significant difference. And very significantly, it can predict the values. Means if the scenario is given, if any new data is being fed to this, it might probably predict which class it belongs to. So that is why it is told as probably regression. There are many types of regressions available, starting from the linear regression to logistic and softmax regression. Certain more details we will see. And now, whereas all the types shown here can perform very well as a classifier as well as a regressor, but the k nearest neighbor is perfectly suiting as a classifier only. So because of its inherent property. So we can see that in course of time. Now, the instance of an unsupervised learning. So we suggested that this unsupervised might best suit the clustering problem, where we don't have a specific label attached to each data. Rather, we can compare and contrast and put it in a particular bin. So we can classify it to be a particular cluster instead of a specific type. So here again, the inputs are only available being unsupervised. So the performance is also tough to understand. But in such a scenario, how can we proceed? And these sort of scenarios are perfectly suiting a recommendation system. Means when it is something like the earlier depiction where the credit card to be assigned or not. This is not a classifier, rather a cluster. Whether it is possible, yes means a cluster, and no, don't approve means another cluster. So these sort of systems might be developed based on the unsupervised learning. Here again, the top flow is very similar, except for the difference there is no label attached to the learner, whereas the bottom testing phase is also very similar to the supervised class. And in addition to clustering, this can also perform association, means a form of linking the new instance to the already existing instance. And specifically, this would help us in the anomaly detection. A typical case where I said where and all the power system variations or predictions are available, any abnormality can be detected by the anomaly. And a typical example would be the classifier would be a one class SVM is better suited for this. Of course, there are now plenty. Yeah. Do I hear any clarification at this moment? I presume you can continue. Now this is a specific. I told you we might need to probably pay more attention on this reinforcement learning, which is a very challenging task, and it has probably the scenario to observe. I hope our friends, our colleagues have put themselves in mute, and when necessary, please unmute. Now we have an observed situation, means read the environment and then decide whether the agent is the model being developed. And based on the environment, the agent can take two decisions, left or right. The left, in the sense, these decisions are something called a policy or the action. When the policy is to move to his right, probably it is not the right decision. How is it being learned? We might need to give a reward or a penalty. If the movement is in the feasible direction, give a reward. If in the opposite direction, give a penalty. So both are made learnt by the agent or the system model, and accordingly it decides. And then better takes a perfect algorithm. That is why it is better suited for an optimizer, whether it is moving towards the better solution or the optima. If not, it will get a penalty. So accordingly, the instructions are done. And the complete picture.
Nirmala ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Ma'am, ma'am, Nimla, ma'am, ma'am, Nimla, ma'am, 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 could you unmute yourself, ma'am? Nimla, ma'am.
Okay, from when? From when?
Ma'am, just 5 minutes, ma'am.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Mm.
Thank you, thank you. So should should I put it in as slideshow mode? Is it
Yes,
seen now?
ma'am. Ma'am, it's not in slideshow mode, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now,
Yes, ma'am.
now
Ah,
it's a right. Yeah. Okay, da. Thank you, Jayanti. Yeah,
thank you, ma'am.
yeah. So, continuing. I hope it's audible, and the screen is shared also.
Ma'am, the screen is shared, ma'am, but it's not in slideshow mode, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that only. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, yes, ma'am. Now it's okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
So, we were here. Probably the challenge is exactly in the right point. You have hinted me that I'm not audible. Sorry for the interruption. See, the challenges which we need to pay attention is, though having lots and lots of data, please ensure whether it is all valuable or meaningful. So the quantity alone is not sufficient, but the quality of data is also necessary. That is the one first challenge. And the data to become a representative, or it should be meaningful to the learner to identify, and it cannot be corrupted or noisy, and the features should be distinct to give some clue for the learner. So these things are to be studied well when we start approaching the problem using this. And once the data is being shaped, but still the accuracy might not probably be better on all scenarios. These two instances called overfitting and underfitting are the two examples of such scenarios. So overfitting would be a case where the algorithm developed is perfectly suiting a specific scenario, or when the models or the training is well done, very well done, the training accuracy is very high, so that it is able to probably detect or classify it better. But a new instance come, it is unable to categorize. So that is the problem of overfitting. Whereas underfitting is, testing accuracy is fine, very fine, but and it is so very generalized. So that is the advantage of underfitting, but cannot probably it is very very over generalized, so that it cannot discriminate between the specific classes and its subclasses. So neither overfitting nor underfitting to be executed by our algorithm. So how do we ensure that whether it is best suited? The best suited or the algorithmic specifications, or the observation, is by using the testing and validation. So the hyperparameters tuning, or the model selection, these are the two critical jobs to be carried out. And the data mismatch, when the one data may be numerical, the other data can be categorical. So in such a scenario, how do we ensure our algorithm is performing well? These are the challenges to be handled when we develop the algorithm. And there is a procedure which has a two-step form. So far what we discussed is falling under this category. What I want you to probably pay attention is, how do I check whether the assumptions or the model or the data I assume to perform better is right. In order to make such a decision, we need to execute probably one of these or all these three. We have to visualize the data, check for correlations, and the attribute combinations or the features to be rightly chosen. And preparing the data, selecting the model, these are by default a step. So I want to put so far what we have seen in a nutshell. So this is a self-explanatory slide. Please see and just give a glance on this informations available here. So to continue, it has the specific objective to be clear, and whether I have enough data to be ensured, and what are the features I have chosen, and is my model sufficiently efficient. If these informations are confirmed, we are ready to go ahead. Now, the very important topic of study is feature engineering. which now keep coming up to a larger extent because of this necessity to make our model better. So the data is in fact raw, very raw, can have different class, maybe the categorical or the numerical, and a mix of both, and they are not readily understood by the algorithm. So the feature engineering bring them all into a particular category or a type, so that the machine is now able to read or correlate it. So this is called feature vector, and the job of converting the raw data into feature vector is called feature engineering, and that needs some importance. And now, feature engineering is being handled or have been handled by multiple stages. A single step is not sufficient to handle the data to be useful enough. That the first job done is called data cleaning, where the raw data is made to be learned. For cleaning the data, probably we have to handle a situation called missing data. Certain data is not available, or certain data to be replaced by our own imputation method or just a forward backward fill methods. So these are all will make the data to be sufficient number available. And clean, if not relevant, please clean. So that is a data cleaning method. And this is about the data. Now the categorical, the text to numerical form. So that conversion might need multiple encoding operations. A one hot is the conversion to just a simple binary form, or an ordinal encoder to automatically assign the binary form, and the label encoder is manually assign the numbers to the data category. So these are certain types of options available. And after that, after doing the categorical management, we might need to do the transformation also. So the transformation functions, we can create a class and define a fit function or fitness function, and the transformation is performed by an inbuilt function called a transform function. So these are certain, in addition to the data handling, we have to execute these for the smooth development of the algorithm. Continuing, the feature scaling feature, as we have seen and come across, the data can fall in a very wide range. We have to make it to be in a particular range, then we can use a min-max scaling, which will bring it up all the data into 0 to 1 range. That is one particular type. Or the range can be anything as I wish, but should be within a range. Then I can use the feature range parameter, or min max only to fit within 0 to 1. So these are certain choices available. Once the features are scaled enough, we can readily put it in the operation. But if we wanted to have every data should have a zero mean and a unit variance, then we can go ahead with the standard scaling. And once the scaling is done, the data is being put in a particular range, but still they are separated enough or distributed enough. Then to train it, we can form the intermediate groups called partitioned groups. That is called binning. Then from the to higher dimensions, if you wanted to have the interaction or the polynomial features, then we might make use of polynomial feature functions of the inbuilt operation. And now, the more important class of operation is called transformations. So when we can handle linear functions in a different way, the nonlinearity of the features should also be handled. For that, a univariate transformation function is helping. So when this is a scenario when the data exhibit a nonlinear relationship. This is now for data handling. Now, data has been pruned, cleaned, and if necessary added, and if necessary transformed, everything is done. But still, the feature to be perfectly selected. So the feature selection is obviously a challenge. Excuse me, in the model development. So the adding features, just simply adding features will make it overfit. So that we need to make the choice of significant features. And this job is done by at least three such examples: univariate, model-based, or iterative, and which is slightly elaborated here in this slide. So the univariate, the features having the highest degree of relation. What do we call is a high confidence value. So you measure the confidence value of the feature and then sequence them or sort them and choose the feature with highest value to form our choice of features. We can even decide a threshold, and then anything above the threshold we can use. For fixing the threshold, we need to execute it for multiple times and select the k best features based on the threshold. And the percentile also can be fixed to choose the features. So either the number of features or the percentile of features, we can use the proper function for that and then make the statistics filled in. This is the statistical way. Whereas the model-based way, we want to choose the features. The feature importance is a function which helps us to calculate or identify the importance of the feature and then make the model learned using them. And the iterative section is doing either with the no feature at the beginning and then keep on building up. That is called addition process. Or start with the all features and keep on removing which are all insignificant. That is called removing process. So now the features are now chosen. In the previous things we have seen how the data can be cleaned. Now the cleaned data is modeled as a feature. And out of so many features, how can I decide which are all important? When these two important jobs are done, then we have to split the data set into three such operations. One is train, another is test, and the important one is called validation. So between train and test, we might need to do the validation process also. That is only verifying whether the algorithm is perfect or not. Now, coming back to the standard linear model training. How can we train the linear model? It can be in the closed form using the equations or the iterative approach by systematically applying a procedure. This is a typical example of a closed form case. The computation, the model parameters have to directly be computed. To compute that, we always need a cost function, whether the function is approaching towards our expectation or not. And the cost function's objective can be a minimization of MSE, mean square error. So this is a stipulated procedure by developing a model, developing a response for the error function and keep on minimizing the error. Once the error is minimum, we fix that it is the model is best fit. That is one form. Other than that, this is a very popular form called the iterative method. So in the iterative method, the gradient descent is a perfect example. Though it has a few drawbacks, the gradient descent probably having the cost is the function and theta is the error. So when we keep on learning in one direction, we assume to reach a minimum. If the achieved minimum is sufficient, if at all a minimization function, then we can stop execution of the algorithm or the model is said to be fit under the process called gradient descent. But while doing so, we might end up in two cases where the learning rate is or nothing but the step size. So if the step size is too small, we can observe it takes a long time to reach the minima. And if the step size is very wide also, we might miss a chance of minima. So obviously, it can neither be too small nor too vast or big. So that there should be a yes. Anything? I hope I can continue. So by assuming or identifying the global minima, the positions are to be perfectly fit so that the gradient descent problem can learn on its own till it reaches the optimum solution. And there is a decision probably to decide when to fix it up or when to stop it, depending upon the number of iterations. And when we have the linear data, the linear models will work perfectly. When the data is nonlinear, probably some regression operation might help us fit the data perfectly. So, and it might avoid the overfitting problem also. So how the regression operation is performing, Instead of assuming the features as it is, we can add powers of features. If assume x and y are the features, we can keep on adding x square, y square, and so on, so that the dimension is made increase, the quality of the features or the powers of features increased. And still after doing that, we have to find the relationship among features. So the classification is now made possible using the current dimension or the enhanced dimension. And for that also, the automated or the inbuilt functions like polynomial features is available. And the degree of the parameter allows to which level I should add the new power, x square or x cube or xn. So that is the advantage of the polynomial regression. And to handle the overfitting problem of the linear models, linear is always supposed to be the better choice, but still they have overfitting problem. To overcome that, there are at least three types of regression schemes available: ridge regression, or lasso, or elastic. And just a brief information on that will make us feel comfortable. The ridge regression is also known as Tikhonov regularization. It has a cost function, and where the MSE is naturally to be minimized. And when the moment the alpha parameter becomes 0, it is nothing but a linear regression expression. And the regularization to be done only during the training phase, so that the model is best fit. It's not overfit. When we want to apply probably a lasso, which is an abbreviation of least absolute shrinkage and selection operator. The word itself explanatory. We need to eliminate the weights of least importance. If it is least significance, remove them. So shrink them, shrinkage them. So that is how we get the features being pruned, so that overfitting may not happen. So the feature selection and outputs a sparse model. It will give as minimum as necessary the features will be fed by the regression model. Now, there is a class when we can combine both of them. It is a ridge as well as a lasso. Combination is called the elastic. So having the two components from two regression equations, and ultimately when r equal to 0, it becomes a ridge expression, and when r is 1, it becomes a lasso regression. So these three are popularly used for overfitting problem. And fine. And one more last step what we can add for this is early stopping. If the early stopping is necessary, we have to do it. When to decide the stopping is achieved, we have to have the compare with the validation set and the training set. The training set, which is a red curve, naturally keeps on reducing the error. And when we are validating, there is a stage till which the error is reducing. And some point of time, if it starts increasing, then that indicates the boundary to stop the iteration. So the best model is supposed to be achieved when the validation becomes the minimum expected by us. So that is this point. This is one particular class what we can use for stopping the criteria. And as I hinted in the earlier slide, for a classification and regression, there is a linear regression, and continuing with that is a logistic regression, and the softmax regression, which is again useful for a multinomial logistic regression. It is for a multi-class problem. If it is a binary class problem, a logistic regression is sufficient. So these two are an extension of regression algorithms. Now, this is a real challenge of our machine learning. Dimensionality is very high, lot of features, but we don't want to handle every one of them. We want to choose precisely. So the process called dimensionality reduction is coming up. And there are multiple algorithms. Thank God we do have many such algorithms available at hand, so that the developer's job is slightly minimized. So we need to apply one of the appropriate dimensionality reduction algorithms like PCA, principal component analysis, or the kernel PCA, and LDA, linear discriminant analysis. So these are popularly used for dimensionality reduction. How do they do? They do it with the projection mechanism or a manifold mechanism, where what is projection is just have the data been projected on a 3D graph and identify where it is being crowded, retain the crowded planes and uncrowded plane remove from this so that the 3D will become a 2D. That is how a projection is being brought down to 3D to 2D. That is the PCA. The principal component is to be identified. Whereas the same is achieved with the manifold learning also, where Swiss roll is an example of an operation of that. So this is again a 3D plot where the points or the features are being spread across. And when we convert it into 2D, we identify only these two the dimensions are sufficient. So doing this operation is called our 3D to 2D or dimensionality reduction problem. This we do again to handle the data in a manageable way. So to go slightly deeper into the PCA, principal component analysis, important steps are probably the covariance matrix calculation, and we need to perform the singular value decomposition from multiple informations available, make the precise singular value, and calculate the eigenvectors and eigenvalues, and sort them according to the range, and out of which choose how many vectors we can handle. And the number of vectors we choose is nothing but number of dimension, which is reduced from n dimension to k dimension, where naturally k is less than n. So this is the first job done by PCA. How does it do? And why do we need to bother about the covariance? Covariance is indicating the relationship of two probably features in two sets. So have the data split into two sets, for example, and imagine the data or the element in one set, how correlated to the element in the other set. So we get a plot called the correlation plot, and that is nothing but a covariance. So if the covariance is negative, also we do discriminate. If it is positive, also we can identify there is a relationship. And this middle picture indicates that it is not at all correlated. So that this might be indicating which are all the prominent features necessary for us. Once the covariance data is calculated, we can plot it as a matrix. And the covariance matrix is always symmetric, indicating the dimensions. And the dimensions of it can be confirmed by our order of the data point. And once the diagonalization is done, we can discriminate between the features of interest. That is the PCA's job. And this is just a collection or consolidation of what the features are to be retained. Just give a glance to indicate whether the important observations are maintained. Continuing. The popular ones are PCAs, LDPCAs, and KPCAs. Now, what are the other approaches? There are multi-dimension from multi-dimensional scaling, or MDS is also doing wonders, where the distance between instances of features to be maintained but still reduce the dimensionality. This is MDS. And the isomap is projecting the data as a graph and then preserves the geodesic distances. It means it creates the maps in form of nodes or a graph theory based node formation. And from one starting node to end node, it achieves the shortest path. And it preserves all the nodes in the shortest path. And that is how the isomap or the features are generated. A specific class, but very, very useful class. And this is a T stochastically distributed neighbor embedding. The words look very lengthy, but they do also do the dimensionality reduction by keeping similar instances close. And ultimately, the linear discriminant analysis is a better form which just finds a hyperplane onto which the data can be projected. So just identifies a hyperplane and distinguishes the dimensions and decides which can be perfectly used. Now, the training is done. Imagine the training is done with the feature selection and the feature cleaning, data engineering or feature engineering is done. And then ultimately, we wanted to apply it on a test system Before applying, we might need to execute the cross validation. The validation is a general type, and cross validation is a popular scheme, and it can have probably n-fold cross validation. And the typical example are k-fold cross validation. That k here is assumed to be 5 times. So take the data, original data set, divide into equal 5 such sets, and make the model 1, model 2, like that, n types or 5 models, and apply one particular 20% of this to test, and the second 20% to the second model, and so on. So if we keep on doing it and then make the test, and the test validated for all these combinations, then the feature or the model developed is supposed to be performing better. And there is now the class called leave one out CV, or the cross validation is leave only one set for testing and train with all the remaining 4 sets. So this is self-testing. So this set of execution is also making the algorithm validated thoroughly. So this is such a depiction. So cross validation is an integral part of our model development. But the researchers have already identified that having the pure class as assigned in the previous slide might not be a reflective system. So the stratified cross validation they suggest, where the bin is formed by taking data from all possible cases. So, but still the percentage can be 20 and 80. So this is called a combination of all features or all data put together to test and train. So this is called a cross validation, and this is also now been an efficient scheme. Now, this is a model is developed, fine-tuned, cross-validation. Ultimately, some slight variations or slight adjustments need to be done. For that, what do we do? The grid search is a popular mechanism for fine-tuning. What is this grid search? It is making the data or the parameters to be split into 3 sets, as we have already discussed: the train set, validated set, or test set. But how do we choose the set? Is by using automatically, if you want to execute this, the grid search cross validation option is helping us. And if we want to perform the randomized one, we have to go for a random search mechanism. So these 2 things are possible to ultimately improve the fine tuning. This is done after cross validation. Now, algorithm is developed, model is ready. This metrics, so this performance metrics, many instances we would have come across, and but we need to be very clear which is a real representative of the performance of the model developed. And a true positive case is one such phenomena or feature. True positive, I assume the data is to be positive and it is as also classified to be positive. And true negative, and false positive, and false negative. So all those 4 cases will form a confusion matrix, a 2 cross 2 matrix. So this is a depiction of our matrix in detail. If we say the performance can be evaluated on some of these specific in parameters. So the precision, which is nothing but the true positive identification. So the true positive by the total positive instances. It can be either true or false. And the recall or the sensitivity, how it is able to recall or be sensitive to the positive selection. This is true positive by the total of true positive and false negatives. And specificity. Specificity indicates if it is a negatively labeled, whether it is or predicted as negative. So if negative is predicted as negative, that is specific. So specificity. And accuracy needs both true cases, the true positive and true negative. Both are calculated to confirm the accuracy of our system. And a better coefficient is called the correlation coefficient, having all possible parameters of these 4 cases. And if the coefficient is 1, it is neither FP nor FN, so there is no false cases are occurring. And CC0 means it's a random coefficient, so might not be reliable. So the preferred one would be the correlation coefficient to be 1 to be better. If you want to put it in detail or some other better way. The true positive, false positive, these are known. What is to be paid attention is the misclassification rate. Misclassification means it's opposite to the accuracy. So the accuracy should be high and misclassification rate to be very low. So the distance between these two is known as the curve. So we will project it is in this way also. The receiver operating characteristics are an ROC. ROC is a plot of all positive data. It can be true or false. But any positive data, true positive and false positive rate, we do get it and then get a plot for both, is shown as a depiction here. For example, the ROC curve, the true positive cases in one axis and false positive in the other axis. And we do assume there are two classifiers working on the same test data. So for the two classifiers, when the classifier performance is plotted, and we do get the area under the curve. So that will probably give us the better one. So the higher the area, better the performance. So in the previous case, if C1 is supposed to give a better area, then that is a better classifier compared to C2. And the sensitivity and specificity are, as already hinted, sensitive means similar to positive assignment, and specific means related to the negative allocation or the true negative allocation. So these are very, very popular features which we would have come across and we might need to focus on. And these three specific parameters I want to hint, because not much literature is dealing with this, but still they are all the right measures. So the null error rate, how often it went wrong is the null, that should be minimum. And the Cohen's kappa is what I mentioned earlier. So between the accuracy and the null error rate. So accuracy should be maximum, null error rate to be minimum. So the gap between these two is the Cohen's kappa. And that should also be a high score to be preferred. And F score is the weighted average of the recall and precision. That is nothing but true positive rate and the false. So if we get the F score, that is shown here in this classification. So the F score can be a precision and recall to a combined number. So we calculate the precision and recall and apply it to this formula and get the F1. F1 is nothing but the F measure. And it is identified that when beta is 0.5 for this, the precision, it becomes a precision oriented. And when beta is exceeding or coming closer to 2, it becomes a recall oriented. So we need to adjust the metric in such a way to choose which would be a better classifier. Now, or the scheme's background and the performance metrics are probably hinted. And now there are certain types of classifiers which would be of practical use is to be hinted now. When we consider a decision tree, the base of very many algorithms, decision tree is nothing but just form or take a parameter or a feature of interest and have multi outputs. And being the simplest binary classifier, if it might have a two branch or even three, to n number of branches it can, but as minimum as possible will have a directed search. So in the previous, the first one, whether the credit card can be offered or not for that particular database, the feature to be chosen in such a way, the prominent features on top and then go deeper into the multiple other tops. So the age is a prominent feature for allowing a credit card, and then look for whether owning a house or having a job. So like that, the features are to be sorted out or to be prioritized and then have a decision. So this is how a decision tree is being built up. And if there are important decisions are good, then only give a assigned class. If they are false, there is no house and no job, then naturally he fits into not to assign a credit card. So like that, the decision is easy to make in the allocation. Now this is one form, and every node is called a mixed node, and the final decision is called a leaf node or the node that will decide the rule. It is performing like a divide and conquer algorithm. All features are available and choose the attributes which are all important to be on top, and then have a top-down approach, and finally partition it and then suit it to a particular leaf node and take a decision. This is a decision tree. Then comes the support vector machine, SVM, which is performing better as a linear binary classifier. And it just identifies a hyperplane. And to perform better, the classifier or the hyperplane should be wide enough, as shown in this depiction. So the hyperplane is just separating the two class, positive or negative. And the decision boundary is nothing but the hyperplane. And if we have a multiple plane, which one to choose? The plane with the largest margin is distinguishing the features in a perfect way. So this is the advantage of SVM, but not better suited for any multi-class problem, whereas there are many other competent algorithms available for that. And one specific class called KNN, K nearest neighbor, it is perfectly suiting as a classifier. But the beauty is it does not need any training because we don't want to make the classifier always get trained. Rather, we give probably the test instance called D and define how many K neighborhood or K nearest elements are needed for D. And K is normally chosen empirically. Empirically means there is no hard and fast rule for that to choose the value of K. But once we have ended up in getting a better K, the classifier works better. Just look at the depiction here. Assume the K is 6. I mean, I want at least 6 nearest neighbor for me to decide. And I apply a new instance. These are the samples available in the search space. Now I give a new sample. When the new sample is coming here, I get a boundary to include probably at least 6 samples within the boundary. So there are 6 dots, out of which 5 is green, indicating it belongs to a government category rather than the science category. So the new point is well fit on out of so many nearest neighbor, which class it belong to. So that simple it is. It does not need any learning, but the direct testing and validation by choosing the number of neighbors. And so it might look less time consuming, but it is very, very slow because of directly the classify at the time of classification, it takes longer time because it need to choose the K and then look for many instances and then do the classification. But still it is a reliable method. KNN is a very reliable method. And a more popular and efficient method, we can name it as a random forest. The random forest is being the forest, it is being constructed using tree. So the decision tree is the base for this. So have multiple trees and then make the decisions combined and decide the final decision, that is the random forest. So the data set is multiple. I divided different feature set and construct one decision tree for set of features and take a decision whether the tree is giving it is a particular class, this tree is giving different class, and we take the majority of that. Out of 4 classes, 2 class says C, so take the majority voting of C, and the final class you assign, we have to choose this class C to be the final decision. So that is how the random forest is working. And this is proved to be better in multiple instances. And to visualize it better, the original data set only, and that has been randomized to multiple copies of data set. So we ourselves make the data to be more duplicative or multiplicative. And the estimators can decide how many such data sets I need. So it is n estimator. And for each such data set, we need to create a decision tree. So this is a decision tree for one set, second set, another tree, and so on. So we ultimately club the decisions of all that. So the bootstrap sample 1 can have distributions differently, and the sample 2 can have different distributions. So this is called a bootstrap. So the advantage of random forest is having multi samples and multi decisions. To tune the algorithm better, we need to have different parameters called n estimators. As shown in the previous thing, there were 3 such estimators. So we might need to construct 3 estimators and take a decision. And the number of features, how many features can be handled by a single tree, that can be defined in maximum features. And depth, what should be the depth of each tree, that is maximum depth. And how many such parallel operations to be executed, that is called n jobs. And these are all certain features which we can control to develop our random forest model. Now, different class of models and different scenarios been captured, but there is an interesting class called combining classifier. Why not I make use of the best of multiple classifiers or classifications? So when I want to do so, there are two processes called bagging or boosting. So the boosting is an extension or a combination of two words called bootstrap aggregating, what we have already hinted. The bootstrap aggregating is nothing but bagging. So we have to create k such samples and a distinct classifier for each sample using the same algorithm. Please see the difference would be the algorithm here can be the same or should be the same to decide the performance comparison. And for the same learning algorithm, how different classifiers with different instances giving us the better weight. Now we get the final testing by an instance with a k type classifier because there are say k such samples available. And we can assign equal weights to make so the algorithm is same, weight is also same. So the aggregation of all the decision will give us a better results. That is called bagging. And boosting. Boosting would also be an additional method. It is also called the ensemble method. So how does it do? The best one would be the add a boost or adaptive boost. And here again, it has a sequence of classifiers. And the difference would be each next classifier get a learning or a message from the previous classifier and then decides to proceed in a particular direction. And the decision finally will be the classifier's decision is combined to get a better decision. So this is a boosting case. So either bag it or boost it. These are the two instances possible. And to pictorially represent that, each algorithm is called an ensemble, and the ensemble's multiple such instances are modeled ABC, and the models are all combined. And the final model is indicative or the inferences of all the models together. And this can have the majority voting as shown in random forest, or can have a weighted voting by varying different weights for different algorithms. So in these ways, the ensemble learning can also happen. One such example of clustering, which is different from classification, and this has probably we need to only categorize the data into multi-class or multi-clusters, and this has a stipulated procedure. We have to have the mean of each cluster, so anything associated with a particular cluster will be decided by the mean of the cluster. And this can be depicted by this picture. Initially begins with the particular distribution of data, and when we keep on processing with the samples or the iteration, ultimately it should end up in a 3 class where everything is very, very close or associated to each other. And this can have or the algorithm can be stopped probably when the assignment is not changing, or the number of iterations are achieved, or there is no distortion, or the change in distortion is found to be very static. In all these scenarios, probably the data can be or the algorithm can be stopped. So this is one popular clustering only is shown, whereas the rest of them are all the classification examples. Each one has its own merit and demerit, and the challenge or the research now, as of now, is focusing on how do we combine or ensemble the algorithms to make it really better. And these are the informations been taken from a lot of resources available with us in the Google, multiple papers and the textbook and the research contributions. And with this, probably, I really wish to thank all the researchers and the Google sources, and my scholars, as well as my university, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, and by default, the organizers of Shri Krishna and the participants. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm eager to hear from you.
Ma'am, a very thank you for your wonderful session, ma'am. It was a very insightful session, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jayanti.
Dear participants, this is time for question. Do you have any queries? You can post in chat or you can unmute and speak.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Yeah.
I had one question regarding whatever you had covered.
Yeah.
See, you had shown that K-means algorithm
Yeah.
for the clustering also, as well as for classification problems also. So,
Better suited for clustering. I had shown K means for clustering.
is
KNN.
better.
KNN for classification. K means for clustering.
K-means is for clustering, now basically.
Clustering. Yeah.
Yeah,
Better
yeah.
suited for clustering. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yes, sir. Any other?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, please.
This is Prashanti, ma'am.
Yes, please, ma'am.
Could you give a real-time example for transfer learning, ma'am?
Yes. The transfer learning is probably when we get the inference from one particular model and to be converted or to be applied onto the current instance at hand. When we convert from one to the other, this is called the transfer learning and could be related to our reinforcement also to some extent.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Excuse me, ma'am. I have one more question.
Yeah, please.
In the last few slides, you had discussed regarding that philosophy, that concept of ensemble,
Yeah.
ensemble of the algorithm.
Yeah.
So, and you told also, and in normally research paper also, we study that nowadays ensemble of different algorithm is taking popularity.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is it depend totally on the data that we had, and we want to apply some ensemble? See, because for ensemble there may be n number of permutations and combinations that which one algorithm will have to combine. So how to decide? I mean, so only data is responsible for this ensemble cluster decisions, or some other factors are also responsible?
Yeah, naturally the features have the right relevance, and in addition the decision taken, should it be for the two class or multi class, and what is the what are all the quality of data available, and how the model is cooperative with each other. The models developed should have the underlying principle behind the models can be cooperative, then the decisions can be combined. Otherwise, two distinct versions and two distinct operations might not help us to take a better decision. I hope it's clear, sir.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yes, Jayanti?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if
Participants, do any of you have any queries?
if no questions, was my audio broken for some time only? Was it?
Yes, ma'am. It was only for 2 minutes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, thank you. We learned the basics of machine learning and the detailed analysis of all these machine learning techniques. It was really a very insightful and resourceful session, ma'am. Hope we could participants had many takeaways from this sessions. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you on behalf of Sri Krishna College of Engineering and Technology. We thank you for your wonderful session, ma'am. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you. Thank you all, Jayanti. It was
Thank you.
good learning for me also. Thanks a lot.